Delegate from Bedford.
Also close.
Delegate Byron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House. Mr. Speaker, this House is once again being asked to ratify the so-called Equal Rights Amendment to the United States Constitution. Advocates of the ERA have said it's essential to ensure equality for women and to end legal distinctions between men and women in the law. When this amendment was sent to the states for consideration in 1972, 30 states ratified it within a single year. But then the speed of the ratification slowed to a glacial pace. Nebraska was the first state to rescind its ratification, doing so less than a year after approving the amendment. By the end of the second year, the ERA was before the states. Only 3 states ratified the amendment. Over the next 5 years, prior to the 1979 ratification deadline, support for the amendment actually went backwards. 3 more states actually rescinded their earlier ratifications, while only 2 approved it. Why was there so much enthusiasm for this amendment in the first year, but so much apprehension thereafter? People started to examine the potential implications, the unintended consequences of an amendment that would prohibit legal distinctions between men and women. Mr. Speaker, it's time for this House to seriously consider the unintended consequences of ERA on government-funded initiatives and protections in the law that recognize a distinction between the sexes. What effect would ERA have on the Women, Infants, and Children program? According to the USDA, WIC is categorically limited to women. What about that young woman who needs extra help to ensure she and her newborn get the nutrition they need to ensure healthy development? What would the effect be on Title IX or on the athletic programs, specifically for women at our schools and colleges that have flourished under Title IX? Are we going to tell these young women that opportunities to compete and excel at athletics can no longer accommodate the physiological differences between men and women? We have in Virginia and throughout our nation gender-specific scholarships that are specifically intended to advance women. Would they be preserved? Are proponents of the ERA going to tell these young women that the special tuition help they need is no longer necessary because the Constitution has been amended to ensure equality? What about Virginia's small women-owned and minority-owned business program? How could a program like SWAM, predicated on a legal distinction between the sexes, continue? Are those who insist ERA is necessary going to tell young professional women trying to establish their own business that help reserved for them is no longer available because we approved an amendment first conceived over a century ago? ERA advocates have said that such questions amount to little more than spreading fear. That's always the excuse that's used, and that these questions are mere distractions to prevent the amendment's ratification. But those promoting the ERA cannot offer solid reassurances on the fate of WIC, Title IX, scholarships for young women, or SWAM, because they will not be the ones who ultimately determine the unintended consequences of this amendment. Federal judges will. That, Mr. Speaker, is a roll of the dice I'm not willing to make. This mother, this woman, this grandmother will not vote to gamble our daughters' futures on judicial interpretations of a vaguely worded amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.